We are live, Chair.
Thank you. So now I'd like to call today's Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting on the 19th of June 2025 to order. So start with land acknowledgement. So the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognises that we are all treaty people. Um, Start with a roll call as well. Myself, Vice Chair Milena,
Present?
Councillor John Young, no, Adelaide Burkham,
Yep, present.
Ollie Woodall,
Present.
Annika Ripel,
Hi.
Elizabeth Pugh. I didn't hear that, but I can see you there.
Is that better?
Yep, got you there. Peter Zimmer. I think you're just muted there, but again, I can see you there, so all good. We had apologies from Maggie Hope Simpson, so won't be present. Roseanne LeBlanc
Here, present.
and Glenn Babcock.
I am here, but I may have to leave early. I have another meeting right after this, and it's not virtual. I'm going to have to get to another location.
All right, thanks for the heads up. I believe we'll still have quorum, so that will be okay. And at this point, we have Mark and Nina joining as well. I believe we'll also have Aaron and Aaron Eldridge and David Isaac joining later as well. All right, so moving on to the approval of minutes from our meeting May 15th, 2025. Were there any errors or omissions that anyone would like to raise? Roseanne?
Yeah, I just had a quick clarification, and it's in the last page of the minutes, section 9.1.2, the active transportation update, and the third paragraph. I believe these were just the comments I made at the end of the meeting about wanting to have a bit of a discussion about the terms of reference and the mechanism by which this committee works. And there is a sentence in there that says to discuss the Transportation Standing Committee's commitment to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. I don't think there was ever any question about the Standing Committee's commitment to this committee. I think the conversation was more about how does this committee effectively support the Standing Committee. It really was about the mechanism to provide that. Our mandate says we provide timely advice to the Standing Committee. So what constitutes that advice? How do we ensure it's timely? What's the mechanism was kind of the clarification. So I think it should just be reworded to reflect that. It's not about the standing committee's commitment to this committee. It's our support of the standing committee.
So that was which section was that? Sorry. That
9.1.2, the active transportation update in the third paragraph.
So you'd like the wording change
Yeah.
to remove the point about
The standing
information
committee's
regarding our
commitment to us. It's really our commitment, well, not commitment, but support of the standing committee, and how do we make sure that we're meeting our mandate.
Maybe if the wording could be changed to the committee requested a presentation from the clerk's office regarding the active transportation terms of reference and the support that our committee can provide.
Yeah, to ensure we meet our mandate of timely advice.
Olawumi, is that something you're able to update for us?
Sure. Yes, I will amend that.
Thank you.
With that amendment, we don't have it in writing, but if everyone's comfortable voting on that small change anyway, we can move ahead. So I'd like to call for a motion that the minutes of our meeting May 15th, 2025 be approved as amended.
Melena moves
Annika?
that.
I think that was Annika calling and Melena moving. Oh, sorry, Melena moving, and who was the second there? Sorry.
I'll
Holly
second. Oh.
Okay.
Haha.
Take whoever you want.
Right.
And
So all those in favour, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Okay, that motion passes.
Chair and Alaumi, may I just give a little update on that? As we discussed earlier, is that possible? Just on Roseanne's request?
Yeah.
Just so you know, Roseanne, it will be hopefully in next month's meeting to have your request answered due to, I guess, conflicting agendas and staff being quite busy. So, but they will be here next month to fully explain.
Great. That's fantastic.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. You're not being ignored.
I didn't think I was.
Good. Okay, good. End of thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. No, that's great to clarify. Thank you. All right, moving on to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. So Olawumi, were there any additions or deletions from the clerk's office?
No additions or deletions received from the clerk's office.
And our members have anything they would like to add? Any items to add? No. So I'd like to call for a motion that the agenda be approved as amended.
Holly will so move.
Holly move. And Peter, I think, second there. Yep. All those in favour of the motion to approve the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Okay. The motion is carried. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Call for declaration of conflicts of interest. So are there any committee members that have a conflict of interest they would like to declare based on the agenda items? No. All right, consideration of deferred business, we have none. Correspondence, petitions and delegations. So Olawumi, to the clerk's office, receive any correspondence?
No correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Yep. Any petitions received by the clerk's office?
No petitions also received from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Moving on to information items brought forward, we have none. So that brings us to reports and discussion. So starting with staff, the first update we have is the Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive projects presentation. So I can pass that on to Erin. I think you're presenting that one.
I'll give a quick intro, and we have our consultants from WSP here to present a concept design for some active transportation options along Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive in the Clayton Park neighborhood. Just for a little bit of context, so this corridor has been identified as a desired bikeway in HRM's Active Transportation Priorities Plan. And the reason this functional planning project is being brought forward now is because Parkland Drive has been identified for recapitalization in the next year or two. So installing protected cycling infrastructure and having other active transportation improvements at the same time as the recapitalization work, which is general road improvements. This is the most efficient way of building our active transportation network within the community to be able to pair the two projects together. And then for a little bit more context, Regency Park Drive, which is south of Lacewood Drive, is being proposed to be extended to Washmill Lake Drive as part of future land development within this community. So the proposed cycling infrastructure that Brianna will present to you would ultimately be extended through that Regency Park Drive road extension over to Washmill Lake Drive, where there's already existing bike lanes there. And with that, I'll hand it over to Brianna to give our presentation.
Great, thanks, Erin. Do you guys have me share my screen, or do you pull up the presentation?
Yeah, go ahead to share the screen.
Okay. Okay, is everyone able to see that?
Yes, I can see that.
This is, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Milena, your vice chair. Just to make sure that, so I'm completely blind and we have another individual who can't see 100%. So describe as much as possible, please, Brianna. That would be greatly apprecited.
Okay,
And if
thanks,
that,
Melinda. I will
thank you.
do my best to do that. Hey everyone, I'm Brianna Ritzel. I am a transportation engineer in training working on this project with my team at WSP. We are currently in the engagement stage for the Parkland Drive 30% design project. So we are happy to get on this month's agenda and be able to get feedback from committee members. The goals of this meeting are to review the previous decisions that were made during the concept development for this project and show the refined concept options to get feedback from everyone on the ATAC committee to include in the What We Heard report that HRM will be looking at and to inform decisions for the project moving forward. The objective of the project is to prepare an active transportation improvement functional design along Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive between Kearney Lake Road and Thomas Riddell Drive. The study area and its existing conditions are on this slide. The study corridor is about 3.8 kilometers long. And it is classed as a major collector. There is concrete sidewalk on both sides of the full corridor and several connections to trails along it. There are many existing transit stops along the whole street. The previous concept project was responsible for developing the concept options that extended from Kearney Lake Road in the north to Lacewood Drive in the south, whereas at this stage of the project, we've extended it down to Thomas Riddell Drive. There is parking along both sides of the street on sections of the corridor, and there is currently one accessible space on street at Civic 323. There are Accessibus curb pickup and drop off locations, which will be being considered as well for this project. The vehicle traffic on the road is in the range of 10,000 vehicles per day, and that is based on a 2024 turning movement count from the Lacewood Drive intersection. So an overview of the scope of the project. So far, we have had our kickoff meeting and we've developed a base map using topographic survey that we collected. We've refined some of the project concept areas to share with you guys today and discussed with the HRM technical committee once so far. Our upcoming next steps are for HRM to produce a What We Heard report summarizing the feedback that we received this week from the public and from the committees. Our public engagement session was yesterday. WSP will then draft 30% functional designs that take all of this feedback into account. And we will have a final technical committee meeting with HRM staff to address any comments before submitting the final 30% functional designs to be able to go to council for approval. So now I will go over the options and recommendations that came out of the concept design report. Like I mentioned earlier, the study area, which is shown on the right, extended only to just before the intersection with Lacewood Drive during the concept development stage. The first concept that we looked at consisted of unidirectional on-street bike lanes protected by tactile concrete bollards with flexible green posts. Some positives of this option are that it serves both sides of the road and fits within the existing curb-to-curb width. The main drawback is that it would remove on-street parking along the street. The second concept was a bidirectional bikeway on the east side of the road, also protected with tactile concrete bollards and flexible green posts. The east side was selected because it serves the larger population catchment area and more direct network connections. Some positives for this option are that it may provide parking on one side of the street, and there is space for cyclists to pass if no one is coming the other way. Some drawbacks are that it would be challenging to access to and from the bikeway from the west side of the street. And there are several busy driveways along the corridor that would have a higher conflict with vehicles compared to unidirectional bike lanes. The third concept that we looked at was a permanent infrastructure facility with raised bike lanes, unidirectional bike lanes on both sides. Some positives are that it would serve both sides of the road and provide an enhanced facility. Modifying behind and between the curb would allow for on-street parking to remain on one side of the street. The challenges with this option are the relocation of existing curb and associated drainage infrastructure being a lot more costly than the other two options. So the preferred concept that was recommended in the concept design report was to install option 1 as a tactical solution with unidirectional bike lanes on either side of the road, as planned road work along Parkland Drive in the next couple of years is more resurfacing and not full recapitalization of the street. So we made some refinements to the recommended concept option. Mainly, HRM wanted us to see if we could fit parking along one side of Parkland Drive with the inclusion of unidirectional cycle lanes using more accurate street widths from survey data that we collected. So this is the typical cross-section that was developed with the survey data collected that allowed parking to remain on one side of the corridor. We also continued the unidirectional cycle lanes past the Lacewood Drive intersection to Thomas Riddle Drive along Regency Park Drive. So this made a major part of refining this concept to be crossing cyclists at the Lacewood Drive intersection. So we came up with 3 options for this intersection, only 2 shown on this slide, but the 3 options vary with increasing infrastructure impacts. We also extended the left turn lanes from Parkland and Regency Park onto Lacewood Drive for each of the 3 options to accommodate turning movement volumes that were in the collected 2024 turning movement count. So here's the third option, but I'll go to the next slides where it's more zoomed in so you can see the differences better. So the main difference between the first 2 options is the approach treatment for cyclists. Option 1 has the cyclists on the roadway at the approach, and option 2 has them separated from the roadway. Neither of these two options makes changes to the right turn channels. Option 3 is planned to be similar to option 2 for approach treatment, with the cyclist separated from the roadway on approach. But it also includes smart right turn channel differences and some different pavement markings to make the conflict zone between vehicles and cyclists shorter. I have a quick rendering for what option 1 could look like for cyclists with the green paint and the tactical bollard area on approach. Not to scale or anything, of course, but this is what it could look like with the size of the concrete bollard area to be determined. And an example of something similar to what options 2 and 3 could look like at an intersection approach is what exists at the McDonald Bridge intersection. So I have included a photo of that on this slide, where the cyclists are separated from the roadway behind the curb on approach. We also wanted to look at whether or not left turn lanes might fit at a couple of the larger intersections along the corridor within the existing curb-to-curb radius, with the inclusion of the tactical bike lanes installation. These were at Langbrae Drive and Farnham Gate Road. There are not left turn lanes at these intersections now, but there is room for, if someone is turning left, that people now could go around them on the right. So to keep the traffic flow and movements the same, we wanted to look at what the left turn lanes could look like. So with the widths collected from the survey, we determined that at both of these locations, a 3 meter wide left turn lane could fit, but only with the use of thinner concrete bollards for a short distance on both sides of the intersection adjacent to the left turn lanes. The spacing is tight within the existing curb to curb width, so some of these widths are at a minimum. So for our first cross-section option for left turn lanes, the widths are narrower. We also included another option that would modify the curb on one side and push a little bit into the existing buffer space to be able to fit the widths that we would like better for the cycle lanes and traffic lanes on these specific sections. So here I have shown what these two intersections could look like in plan view, both using the cross-section option 1 that I had shown without modifying the curb-to-curb width. So our refined concept also included proposed changes for pedestrians and for transit. We would make no changes to the sidewalk on either side of the road, but proposed 2 new pedestrian crossings. The existing ones are shown in black at Farnham Gate Road and Langbrae Drive and Lacewood Drive and a couple more along the corridor, with the 2 new proposed ones shown in red at Heathside Crescent and Castle Park Grove. There is a gap between Kearney Lake Road and Farnham Gate Road currently for crossings. The proposed crossing at Heathside would provide access to the Little Belchers Pond Trail from the neighborhoods on the east side of the road. And the one at Castle Park Grove would provide access to the Mainland North Trail. In terms of transit, we propose to consolidate some of the stops closer to the existing crosswalks and provide spacing that is concurrent with current HRM spacing standards. It's more frequent bus stops along the corridor currently. This is still in review with HRM's transit team, and the changing of any of the existing stop locations is to be determined. So here is what the cross-section is proposed to look like where there is a transit stop. We have a 2.8 meter wide pedestrian floating landing pad in past the bike lane, which would be raised up to curb height for the crossing. This rendering doesn't show it, but when detailed, it would include the appropriate tactile indicators for this crossing of the bike lane zone to get to and from the floating bus stop. And our next steps, again, which I've gone over mostly in the scoping section. This week, we are getting the engagement completed to hopefully be able to produce draft functional plans by the end of the month to get this project rolling. And so that's all I've got for the presentation part of things. Happy to hear any feedback on the project from any of the committee members, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that you may have, and I will be sure to record any of the questions that I don't know off the top of my head to be able to find out the answers for you later. So Erin, do you have anything you want to add before we get into discussion?
No, I think that was great. I'm happy to hear feedback and comments or questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erin, and thank you, Brianna. That was very detailed. Fantastic. So we'll move into the question time. So members can speak for 5 minutes the first time they speak, followed by 3 minutes in a second round, and we can continue with rounds from there. I'll try to keep it tight tonight because I suspect there might be more comments in further sessions as well. So I'll run through the list. Councillor John Young isn't present. Adelaide.
I don't have any questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. Holly. You're muted, Holly. I wasn't sure if you had any questions there.
Sorry about that. No, I don't think I have anything to add or questions to bring forth.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Annika?
Oh boy, do I have questions. Terrific.
All right.
Great. So I guess my first thing is looking at those intersections. CAA released a new report yesterday on near misses, and their big recommendations was condensing intersections to be as small as possible, left turn lanes, and then the advanced pedestrian functions. And so both of those big intersections have slip lanes on every single corner, which is, you know, I'm just wondering if that was even a consideration of what a design could look like if those slip lanes were eliminated and we were having those hard 90-degree angle turns so that folks aren't burning through there. And again, yeah, I think in an area like this, the concept one with the bollards instead of raising the bike path up is perfectly acceptable, provided that those, you know, are enough to deter vehicles from driving over top of them. I also am wondering about how this design factors into, given the fact that like it is an area where we're having more density, but when you look at everything, particularly like Parkland and Lacewood, like everything around that is like parking lots and like super car-oriented businesses. And so how does this project fit into a complete communities thing, and how, like, is there any conversation between the land use in the area and actually shifting this to being a more walkable community as we see, like, there's so much density in terms of apartments and housing, but then like the roads are and businesses are super car oriented. So it's kind of one of those things of being like, you know, you can walk across the street and that's fine and dandy, but then trying to get to the Cushing Goodman Library or to the Starbucks, you are, you know, walking in the middle of a parking lot, which like obviously we're dealing with like private land, but yeah, just wondering if there is any tie-ins to the regional plan on some of that stuff.
Great, thank you. So for the Lacewood Drive intersection question, for our scope of the project, we didn't have traffic modeling for that intersection. So the options that we have shown now don't modify any traffic patterns. And that's kind of the reason for that. Yeah, Erin, do you have information about land uses and that second question?
Yeah, and I guess maybe to the point about the intersections too, before we move on to the next piece, I think that's something we heard a lot of similar concerns, Annika, around how people and cyclists will move through that intersection safely. So I think this is maybe like almost like a tactical approach to how we implement cycling now. And if it's something that we can pair with recapitalization, it maybe is more of a short-term option. And then we can go back and revisit how we can maybe build a more robust intersection there that addresses some of those safety concerns, I think, in the long term. In terms of land use planning, no, we haven't had conversations with private landowners around kind of that complete community or, you know, building out those maybe infrastructure pieces on private property. But I think that's a valid point. Right now, our scope is within the right of way, and really we're focused on, as part of the, you know, pairing with a potential recapitalization for parkland, trying to get as much of the infrastructure in the existing curb to curb width to make it a economically and efficient project, and efficient in terms of construction as well. So thank you for those comments.
Mark, you had something to add there?
Yeah, just, well, hi everyone. I'm Mark Neener, Supervisor of Active Transportation Planning with Strategic Infrastructure and Transportation Planning. And, you know, I guess, you know, we could look at this project, you know, pending council approval as being kind of a first step towards providing more choices for transportation through this community. So a beginning of a shift away from that reliance on travel by car. The HM's planning department is planning to kick off a suburban planning process soon. So I think that's going to be the opportunity to like kind of reimagine land uses, and transportation will definitely be part of that conversation as well. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Mark. Next, we have Elizabeth.
Thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Annika, thank you for the slip lane question, because that was one of mine. And the other one, I think Mark just answered, which was if you choose the tactical options now, whether or not that would be available to turn into something more robust later, because I just think robust is so much more attractive to cyclists than some of these first step ones. But it sounds like that's kind of part of your thinking anyway. So unless there's something to offer, I have no question. But if there's more to add on that, please do. Thanks.
Well, I guess I'm not sure I have too much to add. This project's not currently funded. There's no budget allocated to implementing it. So, you know, I think part of our strategy here is to present council with like a relatively affordable like project. So we're not proposing at this point kind of the gold standard for the full length of the corridor. Trying to find a balance, between safe infrastructure and being cost efficient, I suppose, as Aaron already mentioned.
Thank you. Next we have Peter.
Hi. Yeah, I do have some of the same questions in the same area that Annika raised. Basically going to the option 3 concept of the Parkland Lacewood intersection. What I'm seeing there is a double whammy or a quadruple or what. There are 4 whammies for pedestrians and 4 whammies for cyclists, and they are cars coming down either Parkland or Lacewood and making a right turn in that swooping roadway you've provided. So in order to cross the roadway, a pedestrian has to cross that risky slip lane, where by design it seems to encourage cars to go as fast as they're allowed to, which in Halifax usually means 10 or 20 kilometers an hour faster than the posted speed limit. So I'd suggest making those corners solid and having an abrupt right turn to make it into the other roadway. This to me seems not just classic, it's retrograde urban planning, mobility planning. It doesn't look safe to me because you are inviting cars to come along at 50 kilometers an hour, swing to the right, across the bicycle lane, go through an intersection where you're asking pedestrians to walk across, and then you're going across another cycle lane to get to the automobile lane on the other side. I don't think that's well thought out. I think you need to work very carefully if you're using traffic signals to signalize it so it's safe crossing, minimum distances, not these extra slip lanes on all 4 corners. So that's one point on there. What I want to know is looking to the future. And the future to me in Halifax and worldwide planning seems to talk about slower speeds. What happens when you are considering the posted limit for these streets at 40 kilometers an hour or 30 kilometers an hour, which is the one I would really prefer? That allows you to make narrower traffic lanes, as well as having bumps along the way to encourage people to drive slowly. I mean, this to me seems the future of our transportation. We're building roads, even if it's just a sort of temporary upgrading, probably going to last for 20 years before they do another resurfacing. So speaking as what I think this committee should be, an advocate for active transportation, this is a pro-car, auto-centric design. I'm sorry. I just don't accept what you've presented as being a good design, a forward-looking design, a design that will make it safer for cyclists, make it safer for people using scooters, and any kind of, delivery bikes. It's not there. Then I have the question, you've got a lot of bus stops. I wonder how many buses are going up and down that street each day, how frequently they are starting, how frequently you expect them to stop and start, and how are you really designing those boarding ramps and the buses and the signage around it, which you don't mention at all. Are you going to provide parking spaces for people who want to come to their preferred bus stop by e-scooter or by bicycle.
So 30
That
seconds
makes-
left, Peter.
You know, so you know, there's so much left out of this planning, even if you're talking about it being provisional planning that you hope will be updated somehow in 10 years' time. I'm really disappointed.
All right.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Peter. I mean, I think we've kind of commented on in terms of the tactical piece, and maybe this is, as Mark mentioned, getting some infrastructure in, even if it's not the gold standard. To your point about the transit stops, I think we could certainly work with transit around ensuring that those are, robustly designed and have the appropriate signage, and where there's opportunity to incorporate some cycling infrastructure around parking and where there's space there as well. Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
That's okay. I'll just add that the proposed cross section for the mid-block segments of the street would significantly narrow the travel way for vehicles. So I mean, basically the lane widths we're proposing there are the kind of minimum standards now for a two-way street that carries transit and has parking on one side. So I think that's going to have a significant traffic calming effect. I agree that we could be more aggressive with the design at the Lacewood intersection, and we will, work with WSP on another iteration of that concept, to consider. I think if we wanted to go all the way to removing the slip lanes, we'd have to do some analysis on capacity and probably involve more internal folks in that conversation, but there is an option, I think, a variation on option 3 that converts the slip lanes to smart channels, which do slow traffic, right turning traffic more effectively than a traditional slip lane does. And we can also adjust the way that bikes cross that smart channel so that crossing is safer, where there's less exposure to traffic and better sight lines between, basically like a right angle crossing for cyclists instead of that situation where you have drivers potentially sort of coming at the back of a
Right.
cyclist.
Coming out.
So we will work on some more on
doing
that.
A sharp left high-speed turn in front of me. That is the deadly fear for cyclists everywhere. And I think what I would appreciate the planning people to do is really plan ahead, not plan for 1959 or even 2010 or 2020.
That's 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Sorry, Peter. We'll come back around. Thank you, everyone. Maggie's not here. Roseanne.
Thank you for the presentation and for the very interesting comments thus far. But I think my comments is probably directed to the chair. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm trying to figure out exactly what we're being asked to do here. Is there a question that we're supposed to be answering? Are we being asked to say which option we think is better as a committee? I mean, I know that we each have our own individual responses and questions, but as a committee, what is our role right now? Are we supposed to come up with a bit of a consensus about providing some feedback? Or I'm just trying to figure out what questions are we supposed to be answering here? There were many options in the report. Are we somehow being asked to endorse a particular option at this point? What's the process for gathering all of these comments and questions and providing it in a way that I think would be helpful in the next iteration of the planning process? So I just want this to be a productive conversation. I'm just trying to figure out what the mechanism is for collecting this information so that we as a committee have a clear sense of what the issues are that have been identified, who those issues have been presented to, and then what's the process. I'm just not quite clear what our role is as a collective committee beyond providing kind of individual responses. And I do have very similar concerns as a cyclist in terms of the intersections, but I'm just trying to figure out how that information and advice and comment is all being rolled up. Thank
no,
you.
that's completely reasonable. And yeah, apologies, we weren't able to sort of add that to the agenda for this week to talk more about the function of the committee. So some of those questions you had, to be frank, I would sort of like to discuss further as well, because I don't have clear answers for you. So please, anyone jump in if I am saying the wrong thing here. But in this case, we are just providing individual feedback to the project, to HRM staff. As a committee, we can request staff reports. We can make a request for a staff report if it's agreed upon by the committee for whatever we would like to ask. I suppose as a committee, we could attempt to reach some sort of consensus, but it's not a requirement of the committee to have a single opinion or proposal or suggestion. So we are free to make individual suggestions, which is why we have members from different interest groups. So Milena, you've got something to add there too?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you got that pretty down well answered. Roseanne, so for the purpose now, because the presenters here are just given ideas, it is our job and duty to question and inquire about every option possible and put in our major concerns from all perspectives, not only just the cycling community, but from pedestrians, people with disabilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if we decide as a committee towards the end that we feel that there needs to be something 100% completely addressed, then we can discuss that at the end of it and send a notice to Transportation Standing Committee. But for the time being, because this is a pretty early project, I suspect we will be hearing more in the future, and we can make stronger comments. We're being presented to. Brianne, Aaron, I'm pretty certain you will be also providing this presentation to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, if not others as well, at some point, if I'm not correct.
Correct. We were at AAC on Monday, so this has been presented to the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Does that help, Roseanne, a bit?
It does. And again, I'm not trying to throw a spanner into the works here. I'm a new committee member trying to figure out what makes the most sense. I don't think I have anything further to add in terms of comments. My comments have been articulated by other committee members, but just trying to make sure that the process makes sense and that the comments that we're making are somehow we'll be able to track whether they've been responded to, and in the next iteration of the plan that we'll have something to refer to in terms of all of these comments and concerns. And I look forward to the next iteration. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and I hope in our next meeting we'll have an opportunity to talk more about the committee itself. All right, moving on, we've got Glenn, you're still with us?
Well, I'm still here. Definitely not as much of a cyclist as most of the other people on the call, so my comments may not be as detailed. I think I've adapted to the term recapitalization, so I do think that it is probably a much more cost-effective approach to be doing the bike lane work when these recapitalization projects are happening. It does seem recently that there's seems to be a bit more political or a little more pushback maybe in terms of some of the bike lane projects that we've been doing. I saw there was something that happened at council a week or so ago. So I can see where there's certainly a contingent of people in the city, including some councillors probably, who would like to see us slow down on some of the bike lane projects because it's becoming complicated for the drivers. I'm not a driver, so I'm not too worried about that. But I do kind of like the approach that you took with the bollards, where it did still allow for some parking on the side of the road. I believe that was meant to be the east side, because the west side's closer to the 102. I'm assuming there's not as much on the west side of the road. So I was following along fine with the design for the most part. When you did get to the intersections, I have to admit, maybe some of it was color coded. I don't think I really grasped too much the differences between option 2 and option 3 when you were going through the intersections. And you lost me a little bit when you got to the transit part. You made some references to things being in red, and I didn't know what the red was. So you lost me a little bit until I saw the floating platform for the buses. As more of a transit user, I don't know if I'm happier about there being fewer transit stops or not. It might speed up the bus lane or the bus route a little bit, but it also means if the bus passes me and I've got to run for the next stop, it's a longer run. So I have mixed feelings about that one. And also, I don't think I'd heard the term smart channel until today, and I could look it up afterwards, but I'm kind of curious to know what a smart channel is with regards to an intersection.
Brianna, can you speak to the smart channel piece?
Yes. So a smart channel, mainly it makes the right turn approach more perpendicular to the street it's coming onto. So a driver doesn't have to look behind them to see if a cyclist is coming. It's more in their eyesight. That's how I would describe it.
Okay, well, I think that helps a bit.
Brianna, doesn't a smart channel sometimes also require like a stop and yielding behavior from a driver before they complete the turn, as opposed to a slip lane, which allows kind of a fluid movement,
right?
Without, I guess it depends, I guess, on what the receiving lane is on the connecting street, right?
Yes. Yeah, it would depend on that. I think for the ones that we did show in option 3, that they would be required to yield.
Okay.
I know Peter made a comment about people going faster through the slip lanes. And I suppose there are some people that would, especially, and hopefully not, but especially if they're trying to get through there before the bike that they're passing gets to the crossing. But I don't know, it seems to me as a non-driver that having the bollards on the side of the lane and having additional lines for the bike crossing at the intersection on the pavement, if anything, that would make me more tentative going into the turn rather than trying to go through the slip lane faster. But again, I'm not a driver, so just a thought. One question about the bollards. I mean, I like the idea of separating the bike lanes with the bollards, but does that create issues for snow clearing?
That is something that is often mentioned. I don't know exactly what the city staff they have experience cleaning bike lanes that are similar. Mark, maybe you have more about that.
Yeah, well, the bollards are actually fastened to the top of the proposed precast curb. So the precast curb is the real physical barrier, and the bollard provides a vertical element that makes the curb more visible to drivers and operators that are cleaning the street or cleaning the bike lane. And yes, our maintenance staff do have equipment that they use to sweep and clear snow from a protected bike lane, as long as there's, you know, kind of a minimum opening between the two curbs.
That clears up my confusion about bollard as well, because I always thought the bollards were the part that stands up, and it sounded like from the description earlier that the curb, the precast curb, I guess, that you're talking about, it sounded like that was being referred to as the bollard, and I thought maybe my understanding of what bollard meant was wrong.
The bollard is the vertical, like stick, colored stick, basically.
But in this case, they're flexible ones, right?
Yeah, they're flexible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, everyone, for your answers. Up next, we have Vice Chair Melina.
Smiley face, Glenn, in case you can't see me. I just want to remind this committee, Active Transportation Advisory Committee does include pedestrians, cyclists, and buses. So, Glenn, a bike lane is not problematic for people driving in cars. If they can't figure that out, that's their problem. I'm pretty sure my good friend Mark Nini will be surprised that I was at the bike rally when we were all out there, 300 to 400 of us. Okay. My first question to the planning team is this. I heard the word excessive bus drop-offs will be considered. Please define what you mean considered.
So we're working with our transit team around the existing Accessibus locations. So we've identified the civic addresses where that service is currently used, particularly where there's curbside drop-off and pickup, so that is fully integrated into our design, so that where we need to have curbside loading, the bike lanes are responding to that service. And you know, we're still refining what that looks like, but it's likely that the bike lane will be raised so that we can get the accessible crossing over to the sidewalk and then ultimately to the building. So we're working with them on that. And I think there's some locations that are curbside in the community, and there's also some of the properties that have a pickup loop within their facility that the Accessibus uses. So we'll look kind of at the various conditions to make sure that we're meeting the requirements there.
Right, and at no shape or form will any of those drop-offs shall be removed.
Correct.
I'm making this very public. Okay.
Yeah.
Two, I too like Glenn, because as I mentioned, I'm completely blind, and good attempt at describing, Brienne, but I got lost at some of the pedestrian crossings because there was no description of what was happening. I'm more concerned about, please describe what will happen from sidewalk to the floating bus lane in conjunction to the floating bus stop in conjunction with the bike lane. So if you could describe that again, please. So if I'm waiting at the bus on the sidewalk,
so
I'm going to be crossing the bike lane on a what?
Yes, there would be a designated crossing area of the bike lane with a painted crosswalk across it and tactile information to be determined what the appropriate treatment is for that exactly. But the bike lane would be raised to curb height, so there would not be a drop for those sections. And then you would be on a 2.8 meter wide landing pad for pickup and drop off.
So the bike lane is raised because aside from the bus stop, the bike lane will be on the ground if we're doing the bollard method.
Yes.
Okay. Just as an aside, Mark, I believe you mentioned at some point there is a study about bike lanes and floating bus stops. Is that proceeding?
Yes, that is proceeding. The design engineering group is looking for an opportunity to build this configuration, the floating bus stop adjacent to a bike lane. I'm not sure if they've selected a project yet, but we in that process and for this project as well, should it go forward, we're going to be referring to some of the latest design guidance, and the TransLink design guide is a good example of that, on how to design the details of these floating bus stops next to bike lanes. So there's like a variety of like recommended features that we would look to implement to to ensure a safe crossing from the sidewalk across the bike lane to the bus stop platform.
Okay, because I've mentioned previously in the UK and many other places of the world where cyclists are avid and the culture is there, which is what we need here as well, that buses and bike lanes and pedestrians are not working in the UK. People are getting hit in the bike lane consistently. So if that's what we're going to proceed, I need, not want, for people who are all pedestrians to be getting on our other active transportation bus, not to be hit by a cyclist, especially those of us who are blind and partially sighted. Just another public comment. Okay. Last but not least, my question will be that I am for the bollards, as it's pretty clear that a raised bike lane, unless it is dropped at a crosswalk, has become dangerous to people in particular who are blind and partially sighted. And I will make this comment over and over. The north and southeast crosswalk at Almond and Windsor towards the Forum, not a single blind or partially sighted person can cross because it has been angled to accommodate a raised bike lane that was not dropped down lower. And in accordance to my good friend Mark, he doesn't have time to teach each and every single 2,500, if not more, those of us who are blind and partially sighted, how to cross there safely. So no raised bike lanes across a crosswalk, please. Other than that, good luck. I'm glad the bike lanes are still here. We need them, and drivers need to wise up. Thank you. End of thought.
Thank you, Melinda. Sorry, moving on to me. I did have just a couple of comments, questions. So I'll leave the slipline argument just for a second. The Parkland Lacewood intersection, I think it was option 1 with the tactical bollards and green sort of conflict zone painting. It was a little hard to tell from the rendering how far back the conflict zone painting goes. Does that span across the slip lane opening?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. But yeah, I really like that design, and sort of mirror what other people said. I'm all for the precast cement divider with the bollards. I think that looks like a really great option, and as I think someone mentioned, sort of not impacting the traffic flow greatly. So I think that's good. The pedestrian crossings, you mentioned 2 new pedestrian crossings are going in. Would they feature the RRFBs?
I think currently we post RA5s for those, which is some. I think most of the ones on the corridor now are RA5s.
Great, thank you. And then I guess, regarding going back to the slip lanes, I agree with some of the comments that were made. I think particularly Peter addressed this. I think they're extremely dangerous for cyclists. I don't like riding past them. I don't like riding through them. I personally I haven't ridden on Parkland. I've ridden past it on Lacewood. And I know that's a pretty high traffic road and people can go through there quite quickly. Any potential to get rid of a slip lane, I think, should be taken. Having said that, I completely understand the situation that Atrium staff are in here, that there's no funding for this project necessarily, and I'd like to see something go ahead. So I appreciate that it may need to be left, and that sort of the most economical option would be best in this particular case. The question would be, is there anything that can be done when presenting to council to indicate that something more substantial is preferred? So I'm not sure if that might be for Erin or Mark.
That's a good question. I think one of the missing pieces also to inform design of this intersection is a possible future AT facility on Lacewood. There is a desired connection in the AT plan on Lacewood between Parkland Drive and Dunbrack. So ideally we would know what the north-south AT facility is connecting to in terms of an east-west facility as we design the intersection. So there could be a recommendation to come back and implement a more a safer kind of more intensive upgrade to the intersection once we've planned the Lacewood facility.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think if there's some way to really, I don't know exactly what the public feedback was from the public engagement sessions, but if there's any way to impress upon whoever the report is presented to that, further consideration would be required.
Yeah, I think we'll take another look at this intersection and consider, consider removing the slip lanes altogether and applying the principles of a protected intersection here. I think we'll we should at least do that analysis now.
And one last very quick question. I know you talked about a study of bike lanes and floating bus stops. Again, in the rendering, was there any, I didn't see sort of the conflict painting on the floating bus stop where the bike lane was raised to the same level as the curb there. Is that something that would be included? Because, for example, on South Park Street, the raised bus lanes, I find there is often conflict between cyclists and people waiting for the bus there. Yeah, is there any chance of having clearer markings on the bike lane there?
Yeah, the configuration is quite different from South Park because the platform is completely separated from the bike lane. So the crossing point, where transit riders cross the bike lane can be much more focused. Yeah, there'd be tactile plates to guide people to the crossing point. There would be pavement markings, probably signage. So yes, it would be clearly marked for all users. Yeah.
Thank you. And that was it for me. So Elizabeth, you've got comment as well?
Yeah, just a comment really. A bit of an FYI, I guess, for those that aren't in the AT design realm on a regular basis, that these comments are awesome. And I firmly believe in removal of slip lanes where appropriate as well. But it really is a domino thing. So to kind of say, well, we'd like to have this, test the water design here, but we want you to get rid of slip lanes. Removal of slip lanes could be moving traffic lights, and then you're into millions of dollars. So it's not as easy as just, hey, well, let's look at this as well as this. And I feel for you, Mark. So I guess just a cautionary note that if this is really let's test the waters for AT in this area, probably the tactile, leave it alone, do what you can solution is the best. If you're going to blow it all up and really put in AT facilities on Lacewood and permanent facilities, that's when you probably would be best to be looking at the slip lanes. And do you want a roundabout? Do you want lights? And then do you need all those lanes, all those other things that go along with that? So not telling anybody what to do or whatever. I'm just kind of as someone who has these conversations on a regular basis with colleagues. It's not really just let's add A to B. So.
Thank you. Great. So that was the first round of questions. So anyone that would like to make any other comments or ask any other questions, we have a further 3 minutes. So just raise your hand or throw a comment in the chat. Peter, I saw your hand go straight up. So start with Peter.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions on the bus stops with the bike lanes is I'm wondering about putting either electronic signs like the flashing beacons aimed at the cyclist that say, cyclist, you have to stop when you have to stop if there's a bus stopped or coming, within some range of it. The other thing would be something like the signs they have on school buses, a sign that sticks out into the traffic lane, in this case, the bike lane at the back corner of the bus that says cyclist must stop while the bus is boarding. Do that kind of identification where it's not pavement. It's a piece of hardware and technology on the bus, and say, let's do that kind of thinking to say, how else can we solve this problem? It is a serious problem. It needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed that semi-conscious cyclists booming along the street actually notice it. There's limits to what you can do with paint on the pavement and even stationary signs. They don't really work. The little rectangular flashing beacons the city has started to put on many crosswalks are a much different thing. They actually work. They're actually visible for both the pedestrians and the cars, which is not true of your classic crossing signals, pedestrian signals on Robie Street. People who are approaching from Charles Street cannot see the status of those lights. They can't see whether they're flashing or not. And so figuring out how to do that feedback, again, becomes part of your toolkit, is saying you got to have people who walk them and give you feedback on what you've done. And if you've goofed or left something out, you got a priority stream to get it funded to fix it. Okay, rant on.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, I think just on all of these things. A question about the Lacewood. Do we have a sense of when that, would that happen before this project gets to the construction part? What's the overlap potential for Lacewood being considered and this being considered? Is it kind of like this is going to happen and then Lacewood's going to happen a couple of years later, or are we going to be at the 60% design for this when that one might be getting picked off? Or we don't know.
I think
we don't know. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
And in terms of timing for Parkland and the potential to pair with recapitalization, that's kind of in the queue fairly imminently, like in the next year or two. That's ideally scheduled, pending the budget approval for the cycling infrastructure, and then how that gets brought through Lacewood. I would anticipate that would happen around the same time. So I feel like that's probably shorter term. And then, yeah, as Mark said, can't really speak to the timing for the Lacewood project.
Great. Well, then I think that really for me, it's kind of as long as those things are on the table, I think even just getting, I know it's extra money, but just getting some kind of study on the impacts of how removing slip lanes will impact traffic. And by traffic, I mean vehicle traffic, not other forms of traffic, because that seems to be something that council is bristling about. So at least to have done the due diligence there now feels smart. But yeah, I think the cast concrete with the bollards and a fast and dirty version at this point is probably the thing that's going to have the most appetite and the most chance of getting funded. So it's an area that I think we're going to see a lot of growth and change. And so starting to lay down the foundations of and carving out space for AT is nice to see.
Yeah, thanks, Annika. Melanie, you've got your hand up as well. You just muted.
It feels like it's a Friday already. Just a question: what's the dimensions of the concrete for the bollards? Actually, I'm just curious. 2 feet by 2 feet. Does anybody know?
They are each of the middle units they're 450 millimeters wide, and I think oh gosh, like 2 meters long.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the base. Sorry, Mark. Not the pole, like the base. How big is that?
The concrete, the precast concrete
Yeah.
curb.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 450 mils wide.
Yeah.
And about 2 meters long, and 200 millimeters high, I think. They sort of have a flat top to them with beveled edges. It's the same thing that we have on South Park Street.
Right. Okay.
And
So
Hollis
there's
Street. Yeah.
And those are some kind of restriction. Is there any way to make them a little bit more significant? Maybe, perhaps. The bottom, so the cars would be more afraid.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are other types of concrete barriers that are used in other cities, like Toronto has a, I forget what they call it. They have a precast concrete barrier with that's taller, so and a more of a triangular profile to it, so it does provide, it feels kind of more substantial when you're behind it. And we have taught, there's interest, I think, in that barrier. We just haven't moved forward with implementing it on a particular project yet. They do take more space, and they wouldn't work next to parking, for example, because you can't climb over them, right? They're too, you can't step over them. They're too tall. So there's the potential to use different types of barriers in the future, but we're just not there yet.
Okay, and I'll comment to you. I still adore you, so I do sit here as a member. You're a good person, okay? And just one last.
Good.
Go ahead.
I'm relieved.
I know you are. And one last question, if I may, Mr. Chair, because perhaps I missed it, of our secretary here, Alaomi. Did Councillor Young give his regrets? Just curious. The lack of.
Yes, there's regional council meeting going on currently, so he's at the meeting.
Oh, got it. Okay, great. Thank you. End of that. And thanks again for the presentation, everybody.
All right. Thank you, everyone. In the interest of time, we'll move straight on to allow a bit more time for questions at the end. So next we have the active transportation update. So David McIsaac was listed, but Mark, will you be giving the update today?
Yes, I will.
Great. I'll hand over to you.
Okay. Well, you don't need an update on Parkland Drive because we just heard about that. Although I'm not sure if Aaron mentioned, but there is an online survey open on Shape Your City until July the 2nd. So for the Halifax Urban Greenway Extension project, that's the extension to the St. Mary's campus and the bottom of Roby and Point Pleasant Park. The consultants are developing the existing conditions report, and Aaron is preparing for our first internal technical committee meeting in early July. For the Grahams Grove, Penhorn, Westfall, and Main AT Connections project, that's being managed by Martin. So the draft functional plan is actually with the internal technical committee right now for review. So the consultant will be receiving and responding to comments from that committee shortly before they finalize the plan. For the Liverpool Local Street Bikeway project, we are close to having draft updated 30% designs for the different segments on that project. And those will go to the internal technical committee and also our interested community partners for review in the next few weeks. For the Dartmouth East project, so on this one, we're close to wrapping up the 30% design process. But there may be some variance requests that we need to submit to the variance committee before we can finalize that functional plan. And we're also looking to design some more tactical options for some of those segments, something that we could implement, for less cost more quickly. And we're just working out some internal capacity to advance that work. We'd like to have those interim options ready to share for our final round of engagement for that project. So timing of that engagement is still TBD. For the Midtown AAA Bikeways project, Anders is wrapping up that process and is preparing a recommendation report that he hopes to bring to council late this summer or early fall. Also one of Anders' projects is the North End Complete Streets project, which will likely be initiated next month, with engagement expected to begin this fall. The Slater Street Local Street Bikeway Recommendation Report is currently targeting the July 3rd Harbor East Marine Drive Community Council meeting. So it looks like we're on track to make that meeting with that report. For Alderney Drive AT, we're wrapping up our work with WSP, but not ready to make a recommendation on the cross section yet for Alderney Drive. We're doing some work to integrate with the functional planning work that's happening for Windmill Road, which also includes the Wise, Windmill, and Alderney Drive intersection. We're having some more conversations, I guess, about what the ultimate cross section for Alderney Drive might look like with the implementation of BRT in the future. And but at the same time, kind of taking another look at what we could achieve for an interim bikeway connection to complete that part of the AAA network before the kind of ultimate solution is built in the future. The Hale Pond Park Dunbrack Street Multi-Use Pathway project. So that's progressing. We should have a What We Heard report summarizing public input on that project available to post to Shape Your City in the next couple of weeks. And there's a topographic survey underway right now that will allow us to proceed to 30% design. The AT Wayfinding pilot program implementation for that is underway. The Dartmouth route signs will be printed, and the plan is to install those this summer. For the Halifax routes, we're still waiting on the consultant to finish up the signage plans for those routes. hopefully we'll get those installed this year as well. Then the update from the Public Works AT team, so that's Dave McIsaac's team. We've got the rural AT strategy, and so the there's a report on the updated area rate for rural sidewalks that's going to go to council in early July. And then an update on the shared micromobility pilot program. They're receiving lots of good feedback, and some adjustments, based on that feedback, some adjustments are being made to the bird nests or parking corrals. There will be more of those parking corrals installed, including some on-street corrals in existing on-street parking spaces. If you have specific feedback or complaints about the or kudos for the pilot, you can contact Bird directly by phone or email to provide your feedback. It's been, I think Bird's feedback is that it's been a strong launch, one of their strongest launches so far in Canada, and ridership has been strong. And they're continuing to hire local staff, and I think have now they've formed their first street teams. So these are teams that are out kind of in the communities where the system is operating, and are helping to keep everything neat and tidy, and help with the redistribution of the e-scooters and the bikes. And that's the update that I've got for you today.
Right. Thank you, man. There was a lot of detail, a lot of projects on the go. We are down to half an hour. We don't have enough time to allow everyone 5 minutes. So if it's all right, we might jump straight to the second round. So 3 minutes, if you would like. So if you would like to ask some questions or make some comments, please raise your hand. I won't do the roll call. And yeah, you can have 3 minutes. So I think Vice Chair Maloney, you had your hand up straight away, so I'll pass to you.
Thanks, Nathan. Mark, just are we going to have any updates at any point about what's happening with our bus lanes, that the rapid transit lanes? I'm hearing rumor that 140 trees might potentially have to come down because of the Roby bus lane. Is this correct, or is this
I
all?
know I don't know the details on the Roby Street project, but I do know that there was an item on the council's agenda from 2 weeks ago. There was a planned presentation, information update on the Roby Street project by the team here in our group who's working on that, but it got deferred. So I think it might be coming back at the July 8th meeting. So I think that's probably the forum where you'll hear the update on the Roby Street project.
Okay, because I was in the initial stakeholders and did the walkthrough with Elliot, I don't know, 2 years ago or so. I didn't recall hearing that many trees coming down, but thank you. And last but not least, and I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, since the launch of the Bird pilot project, I have had no less than 12 emails come in my inbox from colleagues and acquaintances who use wheel mobility aids as wheelchairs, walkers, etc. And clearly you've seen representatives from CNIB. These scooters are interfering and have become barriers and barricades for people with disabilities. So if we're reporting to Bird, my question to you, and again, I'm not sure if you can answer, if we're reporting to Bird 311, are they to let the public know what the reports are, or is that private information they're going to keep to themselves? Do you understand what I'm asking? If I call 311, it's recorded within HRM, but is Bird going to keep that information to themselves if we're only reporting to Bird? And I don't know if you can answer that.
I actually don't know the answer to that. Like, you're looking to have your complaint logged so that you could go back to them and kind of reference a specific complaint. Is that what you're asking?
Right, and
Yeah.
and within 3 months, if I want the records from 311 and I want them from Bird, is Bird required to give me what they've heard? Do you understand, or are they
Yeah,
just going to say
I
everything's
actually
all hunky dory?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you can still
Okay.
call 311.
Yeah.
And if it's an operational kind of issue, they will forward that complaint to Bird. And I assume that still gets logged as a service request with 311. But these would be, yeah, sorry, these would be good questions for Brittany McLean.
Okay, I'll email her. Great, thank you. End of thought.
Great. Thanks, Melinda. Annika, you're up
Yeah.
next.
Two. First, yay, wayfinding signs. Woot. Two, this is a question I feel like I've had for a really long time, and I haven't heard anyone actually ask it or address it. But for Slater Street, was Victoria Street ever considered as an alternative? Because I just have so many problems with Slater Street, particularly the crossing with Windmill. That's like that weird transition where people start behaving like it's a highway or that they're coming off of a highway, and the fact that it's a painted crosswalk makes my soul scared. And so I'm just wondering, it feels like Victoria is a really wide road, and I was just wondering why, if it was ever considered, and why not? Was it just not politically, was there pushback, or are there like bottlenecks that I'm not seeing when I look at that road?
I'm not familiar enough with the planning process to answer that question. I don't know if Victoria Road was considered. I mean, there's a steep slope at the bottom of Victoria Road, right? And it's quite narrow, that section that's only one way up to Dahlia Street, basically. So there's some like fairly serious constraints there. It also, but other than that, I don't know for sure. But you're concerned about
the crossing
because the
Woodland,
crossing
sorry, not
of
Windmill.
Woodland.
My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like one of those things where like people coming from Victoria and heading up Woodland are accelerating, and usually if there's traffic along there too, they like get around that corner and they're like, huzzah, off I go. So they're accelerating towards that intersection. And then the same thing, it's like it takes them multiple blocks to slow down if you're coming off of the highway by the time you get to Victoria Road. And again, it just feels like such a high risk place to cross without lights. But also putting lights a block before another set of lights is obviously insane. So yeah, that's like my big thing that every time I'm in that area, I'm like, this is insane and someone's gonna get smoked.
I'm pretty sure we're proposing some kind of a crossing treatment there at Woodland. But I just don't have it on off the top of my head. If you give me
Can
a couple
I email
minutes,
that?
I might be able to,
I can email too. I don't need the answer right now. It was just a
Okay.
question that, keeps me up at night.
Thanks, Annika. Holly?
Thank you. I think my entire group and everybody who participates in this just wants the safest possible option we can afford. But that is impossible. So we just like to have some acknowledgement of the waste of space, especially in downtown Halifax. If they were one-way streets in most of downtown Halifax, and it would be a much safer destination for anybody who's walking or rolling. But they seem to throw that out because cars are so bloody important. And I am a driver, and I object to cars being in certain areas sometimes. And that's about all I'd like to add to any conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Melinda and Annika, your hands are still up. Did you have further comments? Yep. I suppose I'll take, sorry, just 1 minute myself. Annika, just add to your last comment about Woodland. I think as I drove down it last night at about 11 p.m. in the fog, it's pretty frightening how difficult it is to see pedestrians and takes cars a very long time to slow down. So I just thought I'd add to that. Great. So if there were no other comments, oh, sorry, Mark, you've got something?
Yeah, well, I just can report back on the proposed crossing treatment for Woodland, and I guess this is a bit of a preview of the recommendation to council, but we're proposing a half signal, pedestrian and cyclist activated half signal for that crossing. So there would be, a traffic signal that stops the traffic on Woodland to allow cyclists and pedestrians to cross.
Thanks for the update, Mark.
There's one in front of my house and cars blow through it all the time. So regardless of if the lights are flashing, but
No, it's a traffic signal. Like it would be a red
okay.
signal for vehicles,
Okay. Slightly beefier.
Perfect. Well, thanks for
thanks for looking
at that, Mark. Great. Well, if that was a little briefer than I expected, if there were no other comments, we'll keep moving on. But before that, I think we've still got Erin and Mark. So thank you for all your comments and your time. Brianna has left, so we'll have to pass on our thanks separately. So moving on to added items. I don't think we have any. The date of our next meeting is the 21st of August 2025. And that just leaves us to adjourn 20 minutes early. So unless there's anything to add, call for a motion to adjourn the Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting of the 19th of June.
Mr. Chair, you said August, so we have nothing in July, right? It's Milena.
Yep. Next meeting is set for August 21. I believe we don't have a meeting in July.
Great. Okay.
I can put that motion forward, Nathan, if.
Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. Any second?
Don't need one.
Oh, sorry. No second.
That's the one rule I know.
Okay. Thank you. That's, I think, the third time I've been reminded of that. Great. Well, in that case, we'll adjourn.